Japan really likes Lovecraft, so much so that Call of Cthulhu eclipses D&D in popularity. Naturally, this is reflected in Japanese media, ranging from direct adaptations to original works to random cameos all over the place. And of course, there are also weird takes on the Cthulhu mythos as a whole. Things like Nyaruko-san, which reimagines Nyarlathotep and other eldritch abominations as cute high school girls. Another example is Ane Narumono, a manga which asks the question, what if Shub Niggurath was your big sister that wants to Ida Pochi, also known as Pochigoya, also known as Pochimaru, also known as just Pochi-sensei, is a Japanese manga artist and illustrator. You may know her as the character designer for the MILF Isekai from a couple years ago. She is also the artist for Hololife's Pavolia Rene, as well as a whole family of VTubers. Pochi herself is also a VTuber. I actually made some fan art for her once, and she went on to feature it on stream. That was also my most popular post on Twitter, before I nuked my account. Anyway, Pochi is a fan of Lovecraft stuff, if you couldn't tell by her VTuber models, so back in 2015 she wrote a Lovecraftian manga called Ane Narumono. People loved it so much that in 2016 it got picked up for serialization by ASCII Media Works. This was then localized in English by Yen Press in 2018 as The Elder Sister-like one. Currently there are 6 volumes released in English. Also there's an OVA in production. Now, I first stumbled upon this series when I was just getting into manga, but back then I wasn't cultured enough to give it a go. Still, it's just stuck in my mind as one of those bizarre manga premises. Things like the vending machine isekai, or the doorknob hentai, or Nyaruko-san. Many years later, I would find the clip of Pochi reacting to Reine's debut, which is how I found out that she was a VTuber. Being a lot more cultured now, I decided I should finally go and read her manga. Which was actually harder than you'd think because for some reason Amazon has delisted the first volume. So here I am talking about it, because for some reason this manga just keeps sticking in my mind. Let's start with the plot. Following the tragic death of his parents, Yu is left an orphan. None of his family members want him around because he's too polite and it creeps them out. Also he can see ghosts, which always means regular people hate you. Eventually he ends up with his weird uncle who has a single rule. Do not enter the creepy shed in the backyard. So obviously when an accident leaves his uncle in the hospital, the first thing Yu does is enter the creepy shed in the backyard. Turns out it's filled with weird occult stuff, and then Yu accidentally summons Shub Niggurath. Well, kinda. While the manga features and references several mythos creatures, none of them are ever named directly. Anyone familiar with the source material should be able to tell what they are though. Case in point, the entity that Yu summoned introduces herself as the Black Goat of the Woods with 1,000 young, so she's pretty obviously Shub Niggurath. Nomenclature aside, she offers to grant Yu his greatest desire in return for what he cherishes most. Being a sad lonely orphan, Yu wishes for family. Specifically, he wants the demon he just summoned to become his older sister. The entity accepts and names herself Chiyo. What follows is a wholesome slice of life story, with the occasional bit of horror, where Yu and Chiyo spend the summer together and Chiyo slowly learns what it means to be a big sister. Plot progression isn't really a focus, but we do slowly find out more about Yu's parents and get occasional glimpses into Chiyo's backstory. A third character is eventually introduced in Haru, who is actually getting her own spin-off, but I won't talk about her to avoid spoilers. While the series is mostly wholesome and light-hearted, reading it also gives me this melancholic vibe, especially due to these occasional narration boxes. They seem to be written from the perspective of an older Yu, reminiscing about the summer he spent with Chiyo and regretting promises he couldn't keep. This clearly indicates that at some point Chiyo will have to leave his side. Interestingly, there's some parallels here with how Yu's uncle talks about his big sister, aka Yu's deceased mother. Now, Geosteel did say that Yu would have to give up what he cherishes most, but what that is never stated. Personally, I believe that what Yu cherishes most is none other than Chiyo herself. This would mean that the reason Chiyo has to leave Yu's side is ironically the very same thing that brought her to him in the first place. But that's just my theory. Speaking of Chiyo though, in my video about Ina, I mentioned my love for the trope of the cute girl who is secretly an eldritch horror. Another trope I really enjoy is supernatural beings having to adapt to domestic human life. Chiyo fits both of these. Her design is also stunning, because Pochi is a master at her craft. And on top of all that, she's a monster girl. I love me my monster girls, especially when they aren't afraid of actually being monstrous. Contrasting her mature appearance and demonic nature is her personality, because she can be an absolute dog. Chiyo's ignorance when it comes to modern human society manifests in boundless curiosity and childlike wonder towards even the smallest of things. Now, she is clearly an adult, it's just that she gets very excited, especially when Yu is involved. This does lead to her screwing up a lot, but that just makes her even more endearing. Chiyo might not be the ideal big sister, but she is the perfect big sister for Yu. The crux of their bond, I think, is the fact that for both of them this is the first time that they are seen as a human being deserving of love. As an outdoor goddess, Chiyo's only human contact so far was through cultists that worship her, but Yu sees past their inhuman nature and treats her with the same kindness as he would any other person. Meanwhile, Yu has been treated as a burden by his entire family, only for Chiyo to finally give him all the familiar love he has been deprived of. Now, you could be cynical and say that Chiyo only loves him as part of their contract, but it's pretty clear that she has become genuinely attached to Yu, to a degree that even surprises her at times. Admittedly, her attachment might be a bit too strong. Chiyo tends to get very intense and possessive about Yu, and then sometimes she gets carried away and starts touching him with her tentacles and oh no. So here's the thing. There are actually two different versions of the elder sister-like one. The original version, published in 2015, and the serialized manga version that started in 2016. So far, I've only been talking about the serialized version. The original version is a little bit different, by which I mean it's porn. It's the straight up, Pochi is a hentai artist. At this point I would like to point out that my mom is subscribed to my channel and is gonna end up watching this video. Anyway, I haven't actually read the original version, so I can't comment on it, but readers found the dynamic between Yu and Chiyo so heartwarming that Pochi decided to make a non-porn version of the story. I wouldn't exactly call it a safer work version though. It still comes with a big explicit content warning on the cover, because it features some fairly edgy scenes, although they mostly happen at the beginning and decrease as the series goes on. Now, there are two big elephants in the room here, their names being incest and shota. I think I speak for a majority of people when I say that I don't like these. Normally their presence would turn me away from a story, but I see past them in Ane Narumono. The relationship between Yu and Chiyo is just so precious and endearing that it makes me ignore my usual reservations, because I just want to continue reading and see where the story goes. The art being amazing also helps. Pochi is considered one of the best hentai artists out there, and her art is as beautiful as it is distinct. I can easily recognize if a character was drawn by her, mostly by the way she draws eyes, but also by how she shades noses and, weirdly, by how detailed she draws ears. Overall, the way I would describe this series is more wholesome than it has any right to be. Hopefully this video gets more people to read and enjoy it as well. There's a bunch of things I had to leave out because I didn't want to get into spoilers, so you can go discover those for yourself. If you enjoyed me rambling and want to see more, like the video, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to Pochi's channel, and I'll see you next time. So here's a fun fact. I started working on this video over a year ago. Originally this was gonna be my first video, but then I made the Ina video instead. And then I was gonna make this video for October, and then I didn't. But hey, now it's finally here. So thanks for watching. Bye.